Alright! Alright! 18!
I'm so ready for this.
I need to write it down.
I'm so ready, I don't even have my packet out.
Okay, so with 18, we always got to get that sine or tangent, whatever, alone. Right?
Yeah.
So the first step here is what?
-1.
-1. So that means the sine of theta
There's no
is
17.
equal to -1. So we got to find a way where the sine of theta
Test extension.
is going to be 1. Now what is sine? What is sine?
I don't think I have this.
What is sine?
Sine is
OA.
It's what?
OA.
O
I don't know if I don't.
H.
Oh.
Okay. And so we're gonna have this. We're gonna have this triangle. We're gonna think of sine, but we gotta think of which triangle. So which one of these triangles is gonna give me a 1?
The 3060, right?
I don't think so.
Oh, the blue one.
Yeah, but that was with this and this, right?
Yeah.
With this and this, yeah?
Yeah.
This and this.
Yeah.
But sine includes this.
The 2?
Yeah, the square root 2. So how am I going to get 1 from the opposite side and the
What's the square root? I don't know.
and the hypotenuse? So we're talking about either 2 and 1 or 1 and 2, or the square root of 2 and 1, or 1 and the square root of 2. And none of those is giving me a 1, right? However, let's think about it outside of the box, because there's got to be a 1. There's got to be a 1. And let's think about if we have the unit circle, right? And the hypotenuse is 1, right? Then as that unit circle, when it hits this, right? Or when it hits this, right? Or when it hits this, or when it hits this. Let me try to draw that a little bit better circle here. So it looks like a 1. So we're going to go circle through the center, through the center. Okay? And so this would be 1 away, 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 right? Just like this hypotenuse would be 1 away, right? But this hypotenuse and that side, you see how this hypotenuse is staying 1, staying 1, staying 1. But what happens to the opposite side?
Smaller.
It gets smaller, right? So as we get to this point right here, the opposite side becomes 0. The hypotenuse is always 1. And as we get to right here, that means the adjacent side is equal to 1, right? All right. But we don't want the adjacent to be 1. We want the opposite side to be 1, right? So that means I want this opposite side to get bigger and bigger and bigger until it's 1, right? And at this point, the opposite is 1. The adjacent is none. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So at this point, right here, the opposite is 1, the adjacent is none, and the hypotenuse is 1. And in this case, that would equal 1 over 1, right? Now this would just be the opposite of that. The adjacent would be negative, but the opposite would still be 0. But this would be the opposite of that. So at this point right here, right, then the opposite would be negative 1. The adjacent would still be 0. And the hypotenuse, well, the hypotenuse is always positive, right?
Yeah.
The hypotenuse is always positive. Okay? So, at that point, we have negative 1 and 1. Okay? So, does that fit my graph? That would be sine. Now you guys don't know this yet, well you do from last year, but we haven't gone over this yet. But this is 2 pi, right? And this
Oh,
is
yeah,
pi,
yeah,
right?
Okay.
And at pi we're at 0 right here, right? And that makes sense because that's negative 1 and this is 1. And this is pi over 2, right? Or half pi, which is 90 degrees. So that fits that graph. So that's exactly what we're talking about here. Okay? So in this case, we're talking about this triangle that doesn't really exist, right? But it does. And it does with a side that is 0. The adjacent side is 0. The opposite side is 1. And the hypotenuse is 1. Which would make this 1. But we're not looking for 1. We're looking for negative 1. So that means that we actually want this guy. Because we want our opposite to be negative 1, right? Our hypotenuse is going to be 1. And that's going to equal negative 1, right? Which is this. So now we know what it is. But what's that degree? How many degrees is that to right there? So sine theta would equal 90, 90, 90.
270?
Sorry?
Wait.
And that is number 18. Questions on that?
No.
Did I explain that pretty well?
Yeah.
Went a bit slower so we can comprehend it.
A little bit slower?
No, I said you went slower today so we can comprehend it.
Okay. But you did comprehend it? Good?
Yeah.
Okay, no questions?
No.
Solid.